Lisa currently serves on the board of directors for several public and early stage private medtech and biotech companies. In addition to that, she's had leadership roles in both large medtech companies as well as venture-backed startups, which I think some of you guys are involved in. Most recently, Lisa was president and CEO at Precardia, an early stage heart failure company focused on, which was acquired by Biomed in 2021. So she had a company that was actually acquired. She also served in multiple roles at EB3 and Covidien, including Global Vice President of Medical Affairs for Vascular Therapy. So we've got a lot of vascular going on here. During her tenure at Covidien, she helped drive the strategy in support of a $1.7 billion business and was also responsible for leading the strategy and operations of clinical affairs, healthcare economics, policy and reimbursement, and medical education function. She currently serves as an independent director on just a few boards, Sermonix, Natus Medical, Naira Medical, if I said that right, Lisa, and Gradient Denervation Technology. So obviously, Lisa has a very robust background in multiple roles, both as a CEO on multiple boards and as a what I call a player coach in the industry, where she has managed and worked her way through all the different challenges that one might face. So I want to turn it over to Lisa and have her share a little bit with us.
So I just wanted to talk a little bit about life lessons and leadership. I feel like I still learn something every day. I mean, even in my first one-on-one mentoring session, learning about artificial intelligence is fascinating to me, and the work that we do. You know, my pathway. I grew up in a small farming community in North Dakota. I'm sure not that many people have ever been there, but I came from a small place, and I took a very circuitous route to where I ended up. If you would have told me that I would end and be where I am today, I would have not believed you. I don't think, and I'm saying this because I think I don't think I would have seen myself as a CEO. And that's one of the things just going into this discussion is each of you has tremendous gifts. And obviously you're here and you're on this call, and don't ever, doubt what you're doing. So one of the things I want to talk about, I at one point in time taught a leadership class in medtech space for a grad school program. And there's a lot of just fantastic books out there on leadership, Small Acts of Leadership, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And they're all just fantastic books, but they're just that, they're books. And I think what I wanted to talk to you about today is just a few soft skills. So I think my first job in industry was, I was a clinical research associate. So I started in the kind of evidence-based side of things as a CRA. And before that, I actually was in sales, and it was strictly straight commission medical sales, which was so hard. And I worked so hard at it, and still have a great appreciation for the commercial side of things and the work that they do. And then progressed through, as Ingrid said, into medical affairs, and then ultimately in a CEO role. So a very different pathway than I think most of us assume CEOs come from. But I had a lot of life lessons that I learned from people who guided me along the way, mentored me. And, I think one of the early things I had as mentors, a lot of the mentors didn't look like me. A lot of them were, older, white males, but I was fortunate in the midpoint of my career to find some really just tremendous mentors who had diverse backgrounds like myself that could help me along. But even when I took my CEO role on, which was, not that many years ago, I still remember the first boardroom I sat in with our lead and strategic investor, and there were 15 people in the room, and outside of the executive assistant of the CEO of the company that was investing in us, I was the only woman in the room. So, still you're plowing the road. So some of the lessons I'll share, I think are related to some of those things that I had to learn and how I had to press forward. And there were successful leaders I had the opportunity and good fortune to learn from. I also learned from my, really importantly, my own experiences, often through my own mistakes and my missteps along the way. And I think that's an important thing, is I think sometimes our tendency is to oh gosh, this isn't going well, I'm going to go take a different job. And that's one of the things, just, some of these points I'm going to be sharing are really about, staying in the trenches and continuing forward and grabbing those opportunities. And I think, our first speaker today talked a little bit about that in terms of, taking those extra opportunities and pushing forward. So a few lessons that I had, that have just stuck with me through the 30 plus years that I've been in this industry is, the first thing is really, failure happens, and you really have to learn to embrace it. There's success stories that are littered with the history of failures along the way, but don't ever regret a mistake. You're going to make them. You just are. And make friends with it and learn from it. And I think some of the best decisions I've made in life came out of mistakes. And I mean, I can tell you, Ingrid alluded to the fact that my company that I was the CEO of, it was acquired by Abiomed. Prior to that, I was COO of another company, and that was a company where the wheels completely fell off. There was so much that I took away from that experience that helped drive success in the next experience. I think another thing for me is I had a female leader who was just phenomenal when I first was at the executive level. And one of the things she used to say is POR, Lisa, POR. And POR was press on regardless. And, one of the things with press on regardless is, I think the point is, you never really lose until you stop trying. And my addition to that, to her POR, was you need to learn to get comfortably uncomfortable at times. And by that, I mean, there's things that we do that we're in our lane that feels good and it's comfortable. And it's easy to just stay there because you're kind of on cruise control. You know how to do it. It works well. It's easy. But I think sometimes to be able to stretch ourselves. So, I'm thinking about a little bit of, some of the comments in the previous speaker's presentation, and taking on this huge initiative in cardiovascular medicine and I think, gosh, if you didn't do that and where that's gone, I mean, that's a great example of getting yourself comfortably uncomfortable and taking on, for me, I can tell you, when I was a CEO, I was really comfortable in the operational stuff, how to run the day to day. But there came a point when we were getting close to being out of money and we had to raise $60 million. And it was during COVID. So I had to do everything by Zoom. And, by the way, this is comfortable now. But remember when we first started doing Zooms and you had to do presentations and, I'm a very connectivity person, and Ingrid can tell you that. I like to meet people in person. I like to talk to them. There's something about being able to read the room. And so I lost that. And I never pitched, and to pitch my company and tell people you should be writing me a huge check. It was so uncomfortable, but I worked at it and I got good advice and I sought out input from people who'd done it before. And, and I didn't pass it off to somebody else, but I had to work through it. And I think what happened to me was, 6 months down the road, I look back and it was like, wow, this is a lot easier now, but I pushed myself. So, getting yourself comfortably uncomfortable to stretch yourself, to take on those opportunities that might not be in your sweet spot is a great way to learn. You just have to be willing to, feel a little weird about it sometimes. I mean, and it can be a challenge on those days. And so the quote that I had, to stay positive on your worst day and humble and hungry on your best day. But they're the things that keep you going and keep you growing. The other thing that's really important for me is really the importance of authenticity. This can be a challenge because I think, especially young in our careers, we might want to, we might not say something in meetings. We might sit back. It's a little, there's bigger people in the room. And then when I got further in my career, it was hard for me to stop talking and let other people, and, a fact, reverse mentoring is a thing. I just said that in my first call. I always learn something, but authenticity requires that vulnerability. You have to be willing to be vulnerable, and transparency. You have to say, there's times that you have to say, I don't have the answer, or we've got a problem. And I think if you think about what was the company Theranos, there's a great example of fake it till you make it. Boy, that doesn't work, does it? And then I think the third leg of that authenticity stool is integrity. If you don't have integrity, I mean, at the end of the day, you think about in health tech or med tech, we have our data integrity and we have our patients that we're taking care of. And at the end of the day, we got to make sure that we're putting that first. And authenticity means being human. You just have to be. And this is all critical for trust and collaboration. Any of you who work on teams, that's just so critically important to develop that trust and collaborations to really drive things forward. Another thing for me is the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know. Your education is never complete. I'm in my 60s. I did this life lessons presentation one other time, and it was on the eve of my retirement from an operating role. And that was 16 months ago. And boy, I tell you, there's more stuff that's going into it now than there was even 16 months ago. So you're always learning. Be curious. Ask people why. Learn from them. I think it's always important. And I think a couple other things are really the importance of perspective. So often we get very myopic and we're championing something. We are plowing down that road because we're believing it. And you're maybe sitting on a team and there might be people in the room that have a different perspective. And I think sometimes it's really good to put ourselves in someone else's shoes to appreciate the differences in perspective and the differences in people. At the end of the day, I think about diversity by doing's charter. The more diversity we get in the room, thought, experience, everything, I have always found that we get better outcomes and better at the end of the day. When you're talking about patients, it's the right thing to do. And it brings so much to the table. And just the last two things I wanted to just bring up are really about make every moment count. This is kind of a more global life thing. Boy, I tell you, we can get into our work and we can pick up a lot of things and we can obsess about a mistake we made. We can obsess about a problem. Sometimes you just got to unplug because it refreshes you and gets you back in there. And you know what? Life moves by fast. I can tell you, it seems like yesterday I was a 25-year-old with a big giant head of 1980s hair. And that was my first mistake. And now I have gray hair and it's crazy how fast it's gone. So don't, make sure those moments count. And then for me, gratitude is a big thing. And I think having a grateful heart and sharing your appreciation with people. Boy, I tell you, you can be having a bad day and to be able to tell somebody else, God, thanks for that. Thanks for coming. I mean, if IT guy, thanks for fixing my computer, or in a meeting, somebody, coming up with an idea, being able to thank them. That appreciation, sharing that appreciation and Thanksgiving is where you find your strength and resilience. So we go back to POR. Well, I tell you, on those days when I'm trying to press on regardless, to be able to find some gratitude is just fantastic. And, I truly believe with gratitude, optimism is sustainable. And I'm not a pie in the sky optimist. I'm a realistic optimist. But to have that kind of positive feeling when we're doing what we're doing every day, it helps you get up in the morning and it helps make it sustainable. I think this was touched upon once already too, I think, but I also want to just reinforce in just wrapping things up of don't ever forget that what you do matters. And, I've been doing this now for over 30 years, but there are things that have stuck with me. And sometimes it can just be little things, little things. I don't know. I'm going to give you a guy's name. His name's Drew Dudley. He does a TED talk, and I think it's called Lollipop Moments. If you have a chance, it's about 8 minutes long, and it's absolutely worth listening to. Because one of the things he talks about is, we make leadership this thing that is just giant and outsized, when really we have no idea sometimes how we touch the lives of people we work with. And then I think when it comes to patients, what you do matters. And I'm going to give you an example from my career. We had a technology and we were, the team was working nights and weekends and so hard to get this submission into the FDA for this truly revolutionary breakthrough treatment. In fact, there was a huge article just a little over a year ago in the New York Times about the therapy now that's progressed, years down the road. But, the first weekend that it was approved and available for patients, there was a story about a postpartum mom who had an event. And with this therapy, she walked out of the hospital without any symptoms, without any issues. If this not had been available, she may have had disabling issues, and it may have even killed her. And the team was sitting around, they were like, gosh, it's a good thing we got this out. And they were thinking about it from a commercialization perspective, and truly, we did something for the company that they can hit their financial goals. But when we thought about it, it's like all that work, all that effort. What if it hadn't been done and it wasn't available to those people who got it on that first weekend? What you do matters. It makes a difference. So don't ever forget that, because that's the thing that keeps me going, and I'm assuming it keeps all of you going as well. And always, as Ingrid knows, always available to answer questions and share perspectives. So thanks for your time and attention. I really appreciate it, and for letting me kind of glance at my notes along the way.
Lisa, that was amazing. And I just want to say that I'm sure everybody on this call can see why I have so much gratitude for you. Your perspective on what we do and what we can accomplish, and some of the things that you shared. I hope that you guys took those away. I saw a lot of smiling, nodding faces. So I appreciate you taking the time, and I appreciate you offering additional time. So thank you once again.